Would you like to remain in the European Union as it is today, with the Franco-German tandem as an engine? Mr. Macron, you're slightly behind. Over to you.
Look, I've always been very clear here, and I think our debate 5 years ago had mainly focused on that specific issue. 5 years ago, 80% of your platform was only applicable if we withdrew from the euro. There was this whole thing about euro and the ECU. No one really knew what it was. Clearly, your campaign platform hasn't changed. You still want to withdraw from the euro, but you've not really said it. For my part, believe in the euro, in the Franco-German tandem that was key to achieving something. When we got the pandemic, we in France didn't have mRNA vaccines, but we were pleased to have them. We manufactured them eventually and exported some for our own benefit. And that was mainly due to this Franco-German agreement to start with. We also, on that basis, pooled our future debt. We started establishing the groundwork for a European defense. And I must say that I am convinced that our sovereignty is both national and European, that both work together. And with Europe, we'll be more independent in terms of energy, technology, defense, agri-food. And when we speak about Europe, that also means speaking about farming. Our farmers know how important that is. They know how important the CAP is for them to take farming forward in these times of changes. So we do need a stronger Europe, a more integrated Europe, and we need a Franco-German tandem to drive it, which is what we used to do with Chancellor Merkel and what we're doing with Chancellor Scholz.
Question, Marine Le Pen. In your platform, you see the advent of European nations that would gradually replace the EU. Does that mean you want to exit the EU, or the European as it exists today suits you with the Franco-German tandem as a driver?
Let me start by telling Mr. Macron that there is no European sovereignty because there's no such thing as European people. France is a sovereign country because France has a people. You actually did this symbolically. You replaced the French flag by the EU flag under the Arc de Triomphe. The EU is not a question of all or nothing. It's not a question of taking everything and shutting our mouths or taking nothing, period. I wish to remain a part of the European Union, but I do wish to overhaul it radically. Why? Well, because there are a number of EU policies with which I disagree. For example, I disagree with the raft of free trade agreements where we sell German cars while sacrificing farmers, where there is unfair competition from Canada or Brazil, whether they sell us beef or chicken.
What Canadian chickens?
I disagree with the directive on posted workers. Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of posted workers come to our country, work there, but they're not paying taxes or payroll taxes to France, but to their country of origin. I disagree with a policy that you supported that reduces EU farming output by 10% at a time when there's a global food crisis, which will probably cause hunger strikes in a number of countries across the world. So there's a raft of EU policies that I disagree with. So how come France can never defend its own interest? I served as an MEP. I saw German stand toe-to-toe with us in other countries, defending their own people and their own interests. France never does that. How come?
Maybe you just didn't go to Parliament often enough.
How come France doesn't defend its farmers, its industry, its businesses? That is what I wish to do. So once again, I want the European Commission to show respect for sovereign nations, the member states, because we make social and societal choices. When we vote, we, the people of France, make choices as to the kind of society we want to live in. And I do believe that the EU should respect that. So yes, I want to overhaul the European Union from the inside. Mr. Macron, I didn't think that you would believe in conspiracy theories.
Interesting thought from you.
If I wish to exit the EU, I would say it. I don't.
So 80% of your platform has changed. A good thing. 80% of your platform 5 years ago was only applicable without the euro. But can I come back to what you just said? Look, changing the club by yourself, reducing your dues, well, either everyone will chip in and follow, or you'll just go solo. It looks like you're suggesting going solo. Also, according to your program, you still want this alliance with Russia. Interesting. You mentioned Brazilian chickens. Can I just say that France did oppose and clash with Mercosur, quite simply because I asked for a mirror clause. When we ask something of our farmers, we want the same thing to be done by their own farmers, which is why we stalled the negotiation, because there was no commitment to the Paris commitments to biodiversity, and we've managed to fight against imported deforestation. We also, and I agree with what you said about dropping production levels, wrong now. We are not being negative on the CAP. Now, on posted workers, look, there aren't 100,000 of them. There's maybe 5,000 jobs, 50,000 posted workers. But for the last 5 years, I've been fighting to change Europe. Things didn't happen overnight. Look at vaccines, about mutual or pooled debt. These are things that have changed, and I've worked hard day after day after day on this. On posted workers, we changed the rules so that you would get equal pay for equal jobs, precisely to fight against these difficulties. Now, when I look at your program, at your manifesto, posted workers, you seem to just want to do away with it. Well, you'll just have to explain your thousands of French who work abroad what it's all about. So this isn't going to work. Now, if you look at the values of Europe and the rules of the European Council, the Council of Europe, the energy market, Schengen, all of this is a bit fuzzy. When you look at all this, clearly, even though it's not saying it, you want to pull out of Europe.
It is the Europe of nations.
Yes, but if it's not the European Union, you just need to pull out of the EU. I mean, you can paint it over the way you will, but look, it's like a shared property. You can't just change it and say that you're changing the label or the name on the letterbox because you're Mrs. Le Pen.
I think I have higher ambitions than you do.
Look, I have ambitions too, and I'm taking everything working, and I'm not being misleading on what I'm saying.
Everybody knows I stand for the Europe of nations. Everybody knows what I don't want, and everybody knows what I will change, and I will make those changes together with allies. You said that you have secured major advances when it comes to posted workers. That is simply not true. You made sure that fraud could no longer happen, equal work and equal pay.
And that wasn't the case before.
But the payroll taxes continue to go to the country of origin, even though the work is being done in France. I do believe it is a net loss of revenue for our country.
Yes, it is. You're right.
Please finish. Please let me finish. And I do believe that foreign workers, get the preferential treatment on the jobs market. Say a company hires posted workers, is going to cost them less. And this means that other companies are forced to use posted workers as well, so as to align themselves and remain competitive. I do not want that preference for foreign workers. My priority, my obsession, is for French people to be able to work in their own country. And that is why I am fighting. I believe in work, in that value, finding work, keeping your work, working in your own country.
Can I just add?
Time is not on our side.
Just adding that what Madame Le Pen is saying is true, but national preference per employment, that means the end of the European single market. Look, if a Bulgarian worker comes to France, you can't just say, I won't have it or have him unless they pay all their taxes in France or become French. And we want our workers, our French people, to go on working in Belgium or Germany or elsewhere. There are lots of them today. I mean, it's always the same thing. You always think that you can have national preference for us and no one else will impose it too. But a European market is all about freedom of movement of goods and workers.
If I may, Mr. Macron, I'm sure we will discuss national preference when we deal with institutions. You are extremely European-centric.
No, I'm not.
This is how I see France. We are a world power, not just a European power. We haven't talked about Africa. Of course, we need to develop new relationships with African countries. We haven't discussed our overseas territories, which serve as platforms.
Yeah, but that's not abroad.
Please don't interrupt. French overseas territories serve as platforms for France's influence on countries all around them. We haven't talked about any of that because your vision of things stunts France. In your mind, France has become a continental country. No, we're a global power, and we need to renew our ambitions of global influence, working together with special partners, particularly French-speaking countries in Africa, who are long-standing partners of France, and we need to restore our relationships with them.
Look, Madame Le Pen, how fascinating this is to look at your cynical approach. You're talking about a national preference against Europe, as you just have, trying to explain to us that we're done with the European market, and same goes with goods, because you'll have as many border police officers as in 1980. And then you're telling me that I'm all shrunken and shriveled and looking at my own self. But you seem to be doing that. Look, the other day you had international affairs press conference, and you didn't mention Africa. I have been to Africa more than any of my predecessors. I value this relationship. I re-established it, relaunched it by being honest and brave about our story, our history. I don't think that's the case for you, but I think they're stunned by what they hear you when they look at you. I mean, you want to ban the headscarf in the streets and things like that. Look, I mean, when you say you want to be a global power, you need to be realistic. But what you're putting forward is something that is shriveled and falling back on itself and goes against French universality.
Your words are extremely confusing.
No, I'm not. Look, it's all factual.